celebrate with them today on St Patrick's Day. Thank you.
Margaret Ferrier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Rochdale for securing today's debate, an excellent opportunity to pay tribute to our friends from the island of Ireland and recognise their valuable contributions to mainland Britain. The contributions of the Irish span every corner of Britain and every industry, so it's easy to forget the anti-Irish sentiment that was so rife throughout even recent history, despite two former British Prime Ministers being born in Ireland. Even today, they are not always painted in a positive light in media, often portrayed comically as an outdated stereotype. It is shameful. Shameful, too, is a continuing and prevalent prejudice and racism aimed at the Irish traveller community. The reasons behind these issues are, I think, for another debate, another day. I'd like to keep my speech today positive and celebratory, but I felt it was important to give this acknowledgement. The contributions I would like to start with are to the arts and ballet specifically. Dame Ninette de Valois was born as Edris Stannis in County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, in 1898. In 1905, she moved to Kent, England, to live with her grandmother, and at 10, she began to take ballet lessons. Her love for dance was apparent early on. At a party with other children, having watched another little girl dance, she demanded she be allowed to perform an Irish jig. Edris took the name Ninette de Valois at the age of 13 as she began her professional training and made her debut in the West End. The name change reflected a public expectation of the kind of exotic name a dancer should have. In 1919, at just 21, she became the principal dancer for the Beecham Opera, who were at the time the resident company at the Royal Opera House. At 23, she joined the Russian Ballet for a time, where she mentored Alicia Markova, who would go on to become prima ballerina assoluta and one of the most famous British dancers of her time. Ninette became the driving force behind ballet in Britain, establishing dance schools in London and Dublin. In 1956, they were granted the Royal Charter, and so the schools became the Royal Ballet. She also, quite surprisingly, became very influential in the development of Turkish ballet and helped establish the Turkish State Ballet at the invitation of Turkey's government. Ninette is known as the mother of English ballet, despite her Irish nationality. She died in 2001 at the grand old age of 102, and with a legacy most dancers could only dream of. Another woman who offered much to Britain, although in a different field, is Mary Morris. She left Ireland at 18 to come to London to train as a nurse at Guy's Hospital in 1939. Mary was a prolific diarist and in her diary recorded much of the war. She dated the real war as starting on the 31st of May 1940, when ambulances came filled with dirty and wounded soldiers from Dunkirk. Mary witnessed the Battle of Britain in the sky and nursed the wounds of pilots hurt in the battle. She also tended to the German prisoners of war. It was during her time as a nurse she met a Frenchman named Pierre, who she described in her diary as slim and dark with beautiful brown eyes and masses of Gallic charm. Pierre invited Mary out to dinner, and despite strict rules around the fraternisation with patients, Mary accepted. She was reprimanded by her matron, but that didn't stop Mary from spending more and more time with Pierre, visiting London and witnessing air raids. In 1944, Mary joined thousands of her fellow Irish nurses as a volunteer for the armed forces, where she was posted to Normandy and treated the wounded soldiers of the D-Day landings. She described her ward as multinational microcosm of a Europe at war. When the war was over, she settled in Britain with her husband. Ninette and Mary were two very different women with two very different stories, but a common thread. What they offered to Britain, their services to the arts or to the war efforts, helped from the Britain we live in today. A little closer to home, the migration of Irish workers to Glasgow and the surrounding towns changed our corner of Scotland substantially. Even before the Great Famine, fares to Glasgow from Ireland were cheap and there was a lot of work, jobs to be filled, labour jobs, mining jobs and a thriving shipbuilding industry. But there were also jobs for skilled workers too, like in the hand-loom weaving industry. And the Irish workers were right at the forefront of trade union activity, something often forgotten. The contributions of those workers have shaped the city in areas like Lanarkshire, where my constituency sits, and should be recognised. Most of us will have some Irish roots in our heritage. It's not uncommon, something we are all proud of. The Irish that came here contributed to our society in more ways than we can possibly cover, and I am pleased that we have this debate today to give it recognition. There is no day more fitting than today, and I wish everyone a happy St Patrick's Day.
Andy Slaughter.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I also thank the member for Rochdale for initiating this debate, and I look forward to